I should be live. Got a little. Doesn't show that I've got even my other one on here. That's weird how it's really delayed over there. Well, let's just close that down anyways. All right. So, yeah, it's not registering that when people are getting on here. All right. So I am live. Hopefully, I should be. Everything looks like it should be. All right. So wait a minute here, see if anyone gets on. A few more seconds, and I will just go ahead and get this happening as if I'm just doing a video, even along those lines, right? I talk to myself when I do my videos, right? So here we are. Yeah. So if you're catching the replay, welcome to the replay. If you're going to hop on here while I'm here, welcome. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're hopping on the live. I'm glad you're watching the replay. For those of you that do not know me, my name is Colin, and I help beginners in crypto. I help those that are kingdom mindset, have the kingdom mindset, those that are, struggling and trying to put together their portfolio, those that want to be able to put together a portfolio that actually wins this bull run. I've gone through a lot of hard lessons in crypto over the past few years, learned a lot of lessons, made a lot of mistakes that helped me learn a lot of lessons. And so that's why I'm here to share the journey that I've been on in crypto so that you could learn from the journey that I've been on. Now, what I wanted to share today, what I wanted to go over here is a bit of a roadmap, right? A roadmap that I wish I had when I first started crypto. I didn't have this. When I first started in crypto, it was back in 2019. Well, 2018, I started with some of these Ponzi platforms, passive income platforms that promised you the world, but they ended up turning out just to be schemes, scams, Ponzi's, all that sort of thing. Then I got in 2019 into the leverage trading, and then into 2020, and I started to learn more into holding coins, holding and building portfolio. Now I wasn't there. I didn't succeed. I didn't do very well because I fell for FOMO. I fell for FUD. I didn't know what I was doing. I fumbled around. I went from influencer to influencer and every shiny object. And I know a lot of other people have done the same thing as well through crypto. And we got to go through some of these things. We got to learn, and we got to make our mistakes, and we got to learn our lessons in crypto, right? But I tell you, it wasn't until I started to learn a strategy and learn the macro and learn the big picture when it comes to crypto before things really started to change. And over the past couple of years. So I tell you, to the last bull run, the last bull market cycle that we're in, I had a nice bag. It went up. It did pretty good, but then I ended up holding, and I held it right back down to the bottom, right? And I know a lot of other people have done the same thing. We can learn from that, though. All right, so that's why I'm here. I want to share. And if you're jumping on the live and you do have any questions, any comments, feel free, post your comments in the chat. I'll be happy to get to your questions. If I don't get to them, I'll get to them at the end. We can go through a little bit of this information. So let's get started with this. Get started with the content here, with this roadmap that I believe, or that I wish that I had when I first started. And I believe if you have this roadmap, if you follow a few of these steps, man, it's going to make a huge difference with your crypto journey. All right. So let's talk a little bit about why beginners end up getting wrecked. Why so many beginners get wrecked in crypto. Some of the triggers, some of the emotional triggers that really cause them to get wrecked. And You see, most beginners, they don't lose money because they pick the wrong coins. That's not the main reasons why we've lost money in crypto, because we picked the wrong coin. All right. I know people are looking for this coin. What's the coin? What's the coin that's going to do it? And especially right now, as we're heading into alt season and things, we're heading into alt season here right away. Absolutely. And it's going to do very well. Now, you should be positioned before we actually hit the alt season, right? But I tell you what, why it doesn't really matter so much as far as the coins, that why people get wrecked is because, you know, when alt season hits and when crypto, the bull run really cranks off, it's all going to move. It's all going to move together. Okay. That's not, it's just not the specific coin that's really good, that's going to move the market and it's really going to make the difference. It's what moves the coin. It's what moves the market. And that's what you got to understand, is that's when you understand liquidity, you understand the macro, and that's what's really going to move it. Okay. So what really happens and what causes people to really get wrecked is not having that plan, not having that strategy in place, right? So beginners can lose because prices are pumping, right? They enter at the wrong time when the candles are green, they're pumping and it's going up. Oh, I like that candle. I like that coin. It's doing really well. Oh, that one just did a 20x. I want that one too. But it's already did that 20x and maybe it's on its way down now. You never know, right? So it's all about timing. And you start to see things like, coins are pumping, Twitter's excited, crypto's back. And then they start jumping in on all that kind of stuff. Instead of being a little bit ahead of that, they're falling behind. And you can't fall behind. You need to be, ahead of that curve, ahead of that trend before that happens. So yeah, altcoin season, all season, it's coming up. Do you want to wait until after it really arrives and it's way up in altcoin season? On the Bitcoin season, altcoin season chart, you'll see that it's all the way up there. Oh, look, now we're in alt season. You don't want to wait for that. When you wait for that and then you get in, then you're late. You've missed it. And now you're exit liquidity. All right. So that's what you got to watch out for. Okay. So you don't want to be late to that party. And welcome to the live here. Thanks for hopping on. What RH core coins am I buying right now? Great question. Like I said, I'll get to your questions here as we go if I see them. And so, what RH core coins am I holding? I'm holding all the core coins. well, I'm holding. What am I buying right now? I'm not buying a lot of them right now, to tell you the truth. When it comes to that, I've got a bunch of them. I was thinking about, okay, if I were to put anything in right now, I was considering a little bit into some more hex. That would be one. Okay. But if you want a dollar call, if you want a DCA into some, now none of this is financial advice, right? None of this is financial advice. Make your own decisions, right? But this is what I believe. This is what I think is all the core coins. The core coins are good. The core coins are great right now for DCing and for buying if they're down, right? If you're light on your bags and you've got some extra dry powder on the side that you can throw in, whatever's in the red, whatever is not pumping, okay, whatever is not, cranked up there already, grab a little bit of that, right? I mean, you can't go wrong with PLSX, and HEX. I don't believe you can. I think right now is a prime time. It's a great time. I've been DCing, I've been buying, I'm building my bags with those ones for a long time though, right? So, I've gotten light on other stuff is what I've been doing. And I like to fill in right now. Well, I mean, that's in my yellow bag too, right? So they're good ones. Anyways, so yeah, let's continue on with this. Let's talk about when FOMO, when people are late to the party, right? They're late to the party, you're late to the game, you're coming in, altcoin season or whatever, is really taking off like in a couple of months from now. will be that time, right? Prices are kicking in. They're really growing up. Fears coming. The fear of FOMO, right? Fear of missing out, and they get in, right? And then when it starts to drop, now there's that other fear that kicks in for people, right? After euphoria, and prices start to drop. And if you're holding, this is what Rekt's beginners too, is that fear that sets in. Prices are crashing. I don't know what to do. I'm not sure. And they start to sell, start to capitulate, start to sell what they have, right? That capitulation comes in. Oh, this is all a scam. Oh, this isn't really good. I don't know about this coin anymore, right? And it drops down and they sell it. It's panic selling at the bottom. And then they'll go back up into the next bull market, right? That's why you need to have conviction. You need to have conviction in what you're holding, what you're buying. So, just like this question here, right? What RH coins, to buy right now. If you have conviction in your coins, when they drop down, you can buy more of those coins. You need to do the research. You need to have the conviction in what you're holding. And when it does drop down, if it's 80% down, you're going to buy more, right? That's what you're going to do instead of getting rid of them. So, let's talk about some real examples when it comes to FOMO. I remember back in 2021, right? Back in 2021, because that was my first bull run. That was my first bull market that I was in. And I really seen things start to get excited and started learning a lot more about the different cryptos and that, right? And you start to hear these narratives. You start to hear things like, Bitcoin's going to 100 grand. Bitcoin's going to $150,000. Oh, we're not over. We're not done. This is not going down. And these are top signals, right? When you're listening to stuff like this, it's going to keep on going. We're going to 100 grand. Everybody thought Bitcoin's going to 100 grand, 150 grand. Well, not everybody. There's a lot of people that didn't. There's a lot of people that knew what was happening. They're the ones that called the top, 80 grand. Richard Hart called it $85,000 for that. And the people calling the top, people knew that it was going to go down. They knew. They were watching the macro. They knew that it was the top. A lot of influencers kept on saying that it's going to keep on going. Ethereum's going to 10K, going to 20K, 15K, right? That's what they're saying. That's what it's going for. It's not over. It's not done. It's going to keep on going. I didn't know any better either, right? I didn't know. So you keep on holding. You keep on going. And then it keeps on, then it topples out, right? And then it goes down. This time's different. Right? You hear that, and you're starting to hear that already in this cycle. This time's different. It's always this time's different because this time's different, right? The cycles, this is what you'll learn too, is the cycles always play out. They're always the same, but they always don't necessarily play out exactly the same way, right? Right now, where we're at this year, this cycle, yeah, it's different, but it's still going to be the same, right? Because it's still the liquidity, it's still the macro that's driving everything. It's all going to end. It's all going to come to an end and then go into a bear market. It happens every time. But it's not that this time is different so that now it's completely changed. I was listening to somebody a little while ago. I was listening, and there's a YouTuber out there. I'm not mentioning any names or anything like this, right? But she was talking about this time is different. The 4-year cycle has officially broken. It is no longer in place. Well, maybe it's a 4.5 year cycle. Maybe it's a 5 year. Maybe it's a 3 3/4. Who knows? But it's around that time. It's the liquidity cycle. It's not a Bitcoin halving cycle that we're in. We are in a liquidity cycle. So that is what remains the same. Whether it's the exact month or timing, like whether it's going to be October or November or December type of thing where the blow off happens, I don't know, right? You got to watch the macro signals to find out what's happening, where we are at with things. But I tell you what, it's just like the seasons. When we look at the seasons of the, just in real life and where we're at, right? We have winter, we have spring, we have summer, we have fall. Well, what happens after winter? I bet 10 out of 10 times we're going to get spring, right? And that's the same thing in crypto. We have those seasons, and it happens that way all the time. Okay? So it is the liquidity that drives the market. And so it'll always happen. But you just got to be careful, when people are shouting that it's never going down, and it's Ethereum's going to 15K, Ethereum's going to 20K. You got to watch out for that, because these are top signals that you're going to watch for and listen to, right? Now, when it comes to understanding the macro, that liquidity is the real driver here. See, liquidity, crypto follows the liquidity. This is what I like to follow. This is what I like to look at. This is what I've been learning a lot myself over the past couple years now, right? And watching how it flows. And you start to see things, start to watch the dollar index, right? You start to see, when the central banks are either have a change in their rates. They're thinking about dovish or hawkish, and whether the rates are going to go up or the rates are going to go down. You start to watch for that. You start to watch the Dixie. You start to watch the dollar index, that it's going down, whether it's going to start to now curve up and go up, right? You start to watch these key indicators like that. You start to watch the global liquidity indicator on TradingView. I watched it on TradingView. You can watch the M2 as well on TradingView, and you could see that the global liquidity is doing its thing, and then crypto is lagging behind it by like something like, it depends. You can play around with the charts, but really anywhere between 70, 75 days, I'd say, I think it's like 70 days or so in lagging behind on that when you watch that. And I'll pull up the charts another time here. I'm not prepared for that right now, but and looking at that, right? But you look at things like that. So you look at the Dixie, and here's something that I noticed. This is because when I started to study, when I started to look at this stuff, I started to look at the past, look at the past market cycles, right? I started to look at the look at the past market cycles and how things went. And one of the ones that was very interesting is the 2017, right? When Trump was, took office for the first time in 2016 into 2017, and he had his inauguration in January of 2017, right? At that point, at his inauguration in 2017, and he started to use tariffs back then too, right? The only difference was China didn't do it was a little bit different. There wasn't as much tariffs. They didn't have that battle with China as much. They didn't print as much at that time. But the Dixie started to fall, is what I was getting at here, is the Dixie. When you start to look at the inauguration, and I looked at the top of where the Dixie was, the DXY, and that was rated as inauguration, and then it dropped. It started to drop. I think it dropped for a total of 15% for the whole time. And that was just over a year, because I think it was February of 2018 when it finally got to the bottom and started to curve up and started to go, right? So it was just before then when everything topped out. So a month before, it did that curve up and started to crank up. The DXY is when it was over. So you got to look at that, but then you also got to look at the rates. Okay, so you can look at that. And then you can look at the fear and greed index, right? So you look at all of these indicators, right? I got a whole bunch of other ones, right, that I've got listed here I've got a book. So I put together a playbook, right? And and I follow this, myself too, right? So I look at this. I got this here so that I could follow it. I put it together. It's a playbook for the whole market cycle. But as I put this together, I'm like, man, this is huge value. This is something that other people need. So I put it together into a book and not just on a file on my computer for me to follow, but I put it together as a book for other people, right? So I've got the link for this. You can get it on Amazon. You could also just buy it as the PDF, right? It's down below in the description. You check that out, right? So you want to be, so this is some things you want to look at, whether you're in the beginning or whether you're at the end, right? Of the accumulation, and whether you're exiting, right? Is you want to be looking at the Dixie, you want to be looking at the global M2, you want to be looking at the Fed policies, whether they're changing things and stuff like that, right? Hey, let's see here. Oh, thanks for coming. Yeah, thanks. Hey, you're welcome. You're welcome for, of course, for covering Paul's chain and the Richard Hart tokens and that. Absolutely, right? So yeah, so like those are some of the signals that you want to be watching for. Some of the indicators, right? Is you're looking for that. You're looking at the fear and greed. So when you're at the top, you're looking at fear and greed being over 90%, right? You're looking at the Dixie being way down there. Okay. You're looking at prices, way way at the top, and they're going to drop. And that's the same things when you're looking at for the bottoms to start DCing back in. You want the fear and greed to be at around 25. You want it to be way in the fear. That's a good sign for re-entry into the market. You want to look at the prices, such as for Bitcoin, you want that down around 60%, 90 to 90% for like altcoins, but 90 or 60% or so for Bitcoin. You're going to start to layer into Bitcoin again first, right? When you feel scared, it's a scary time to be buying. That's usually the best time to be buying back into the markets, right? And so that's usually the best time. When you're selling, it's over 75% for the fear and greed. Everyone's bragging on Twitter, on YouTube. Ethereum's going to 15K, Bitcoin's going to 150K. This is in the past. I mean, we'll see where it's going to go this time, right? People are going to be calling for $250,000, $500,000 for a Bitcoin. I really don't think so. I really don't believe it's going that high. It's going to, absolutely, but I don't believe it is. I don't believe we're going right up there right away, right? So you're going to be looking at stuff like that. You're looking for all the excitement on Twitter, all the excitement on YouTube, everywhere else. Everybody feels like a genius. You're going to get your hair cut. Your barber's not only, interested in crypto, but he's now giving you advice on crypto, so you're looking at stuff like that. But when you're looking at, buying back into the market, when you're in the bottom, here's a mistake. Here's something that I've learned as well myself, come from the last cycle in 2022, 2023, Bitcoin. You want to start layering into that one. How I'm doing things differently this time. When it drops, your re-entry signals, you've got those. Bitcoin's down 60%. It's good. It's okay. You're in that time. You can DCA, right? You can start to DCA at that time. That's what I believe. That's my plan. That's what I will be doing, is DCAing for Bitcoin at that time. I will not be, this time, I will not be DCing into the altcoins at that time. I did last time, right? And I should have been more heavy into Bitcoin. It's a mistake because, let's go back to 2022, right? I mean, I started DCing into stuff like Chainlink. So I got Chainlink and I started buying Chainlink early. In fact, I started buying it again buying into a Chainlink. I think like, let me say $25, right? Oh, it's down 50%. See, this is a mistake that I had, that I learned, or that I last cycle, is Chainlink is down 50%. Now I'm going to start to buy it, right? Because it was all-time high around $50. And so around $25, I started buying little bits. It kept on going down. It went down less than $7, and I kept buying little bits all throughout 20. I bought, I mean, I'm only talking like $20 here or whatever, right? I started, buying every week, little bits, and it fell down, and then I held it, and then I'm still holding my Chainlink, right? And I did the same thing with AVAX, Avalanche token, right? And I did the same thing with Solana. I did the same thing with Polkadot, and I did the same thing with a few of those coins because they were good coins, right? Last cycle. And so I started doing that, but that's front running. So I'm front running all those old altcoins in 2022 and then into 2023, right? And I should have just focused more on Bitcoin. I wanted the higher gain. So, but guess what? We're still sitting at, right? Chainlink, it went up and it's still sitting at $13 right now. Avalanche, AVAX, it's 17, $18 right now. Yeah, of course they went up a little bit in December, but I could have did a 5x, 6x on Bitcoin. But that's why I front run all the altcoins, and that's a lesson that I learned. So you got to move into Bitcoin first, and then you got to watch the macro for when the altcoins are, it's a much better play. Or heck, once Bitcoin gets up to 100 grand, like it has, $80,000, $90,000, you can take a lot of that profit and start even DCing into your altcoins if you want, right? But front running it while you watch your bag sit down below for so long, that's not fun, is it? Right? So that's a lesson that I learned from the last cycle. And so this next cycle, I'm not doing that. I'll DCA and I will rotate back into Bitcoin at the bottom. Or it's not the bottom. It's not the bottom, by the way, right? It's not the bottom. It's 60% down. Can it fall down? Right? Is Bitcoin going to fall down further than 60%? Probably. But I'm not going to time the exact bottom. I just want the best area, best zone to be DCing into something like that. And that's the same thing with the altcoins. You look for the best zone to be DCing in, right? So, that's what I'm looking for. Yeah, I don't know. That's anything else anybody wants to add? Thanks for hopping on here. Let's see here. Good morning. Hex to $1. Hex to $1. If Hex goes to $1, that'll be really good. Absolutely. Let's see here. So what do we got? Let's see. Yeah, that'd be really good. That'd be nice. I'm almost. It's like kind of like being at that point of like, I don't want to have my hopes up too high, but I sure hope it does. I sure, a lot of these core coins, Pulse Chain, Pulsec, Hex, and that it does pump up that high. That'll be excellent, And I'm holding my bags. I'm going to layer out. I'm going to ladder out. I'm going to be pulling profits, when we're in euphoria. I'm not going to hold them until they drop down again. But, I think you're foolish. I think people are foolish if you're not positioned in something like Pulse Chain, Hex, PLSX, this ecosystem. If you're not positioned, I believe you're foolish. If you want to believe FUD, and even the same thing with like PDI. What are you guys' thoughts on PDI? So, I know you're some Richard Hart pulse chain ecosystem here, right? Got any thoughts on that? I had a much larger bag of PDI, I will admit that, and I did remove some risk, and then I bought back in, and then I removed risk again. I did that a couple times, and so I did myself, but I was smart about it though. I mean, I just removed risk. That's all. I should have did that a lot more at the top. When it earned the top, it's not really at the top, but when it did do very well, because I was up like 22, 23x on my PDI, and I had a nice, much larger bag. But when I de-risked from PDI, I just de-risked back into all into like PLS. So I still think that's probably a smarter move. But I still have a nice bag of PDI, a nice bag that I would be happy with if it does go way up there. I wouldn't. I think that I think a person is foolish if you're just gonna dump it all. Say, oh, I don't like it anymore. I'm gonna believe all that FUD. Just get rid of it. Because I learned my lesson that way on Hex. The first run, last cycle, when Hex first came out, I didn't even know what it was. I didn't even know what a lot of stuff, what a lot of this different crypto, I didn't even know I couldn't even explain Ethereum back then, what Ethereum was. And I got into Hex. Someone told me to buy Hex, and I bought Hex, and I didn't know what it was. And I bought it really cheap. Man, I sold it when it went to $1, or not $1, a penny, that is, 1 cent, because I believed hype, and then I believed this, or not I believed FUD, and then I believed into hype into this other project that was similar, without mentioning any names, but I thought it was a wise idea to do so. And it wasn't very wise to do so, and it was a big mistake, by getting all into that other project and locking everything up and watching everything go down, and then watching Hex go to 55 cents when I bought Hex at like 0.0001, and then I had a nice bag of it too. So you learn from that, and that's why I said, I will not bet against Richard Hart. I won't bet against the pulse chain ecosystem. I say that from day one, even though things look pretty depressing and stuff like that now, or they have been for a while. I don't care, right? And so I just use the past, 2023, past couple of years to DCA and continue to add to my bag and do whatever I could do to build up my bag in the pulse chain ecosystem throughout the whole past couple of years, because I won't go against it. I won't, especially if you're at this point in the cycle. People are going to start dropping their stuff at this point. I think that's completely foolish, right? Anyways, let's see here. Okay. Thanks for hopping on here, though. Something new. It is new to get on here and do these lives like this for myself. Try to respond to some stuff here. Anyways, you know what? I'm gonna have to jump off here. I don't want to make this a real long one. Just went through a little bit of information and start to get used to this. Maybe I'll be back tomorrow. If any last questions before I just close her down? Okay. All right. Anyways, thanks for hopping on, and I will catch you later.